Innovation. It charges our imagination, fuels our progress, and builds bridges that span oceans. It turns our wildest hopes and dreams into reality. It powers our movement, creates new worlds to explore, and gives birth to new jobs in new industries. There's only one place and one event where the world's greatest creators and purveyors of innovation meet. This is where ordinary comes to die, and expectations are shattered. This is the 2015 International CES. Innovation is here.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage President and CEO for the Consumer Electronics Association, Gary Shapiro.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our mobile keynote at the 2015 International CES. We are absolutely thrilled to have top executives from Electrolux, General Motors, Philips, and Qualcomm with us here today to explore how mobile tech is fundamentally changing the world. This panel will explore how mobile technology is transforming our definition of categories like smart home, wearables, automotive, and healthcare. They also will talk about what they are doing to stay at the forefront of these very disruptive changes. Jon Fortt, co-host of CNBC's Squawk Alley and an on-air editor based at CNBC's global headquarters in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, will lead the discussion. Jon joined CNBC as a technology correspondent in July 2010, working from CNBC's Silicon Valley Bureau, where he covered the companies, startups, and trends that are driving innovation in the industry. He also contributes to CNBC.com. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Jon Fortt. Break a leg.
Thanks, Gary. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is going to be an exciting panel for me because we've got some of the best people to talk about mobile and where it's heading that you're going to find anywhere. Let's see, they got the names here for me. That's great. First, I want to welcome out General Motors Chief Infotainment Officer, Phil Abram. Come on out, Phil.
Thank you, John.
Next up, Electrolux CTO and SVP, Jan Brockmann.
Hi, John. How are you?
Great. Qualcomm CEO, Steve Mollenkopf. And Philips, CEO of Healthcare Informatics Solutions and Services, Jeroen Tas. We got everybody.
Load.
We didn't leave anybody in the green room. It's Elvis's old green room, so we're all doing our best impersonations, which means we weren't doing impersonations at all. Let's jump right in, guys. We've got Qualcomm representing the mobile ecosystem at large. We've got cars. We've got home. We've got health. Lots of the areas that are supposed to be big. So I want to start off first with Steve. Qualcomm is the leading company when it comes to mobile chips going across all of these different areas. But there's been a lot of hype around wearables to track health, around what's going on in the home with connecting everything. I think we can all agree everything doesn't need to be connected. So if things are going to communicate, what are they going to talk about? What is the washing machine going to talk to the watch about, going to talk to the phone about? How are we going to decide what to connect? Because if we're trying to connect everything, we're never going to get anywhere.
Well, I think we would probably argue a little bit about what's going to be connected and what's not going to be connected. We pretty much see that the rule is that things will be connected. The question is, what will they do, as you say? And it's almost bifurcated into people want to have just an IP address and some ability to know whether it's on and malfunctioning, or providing some telemetry back, or I want to build something that's a drone or something. Very, very complex thing, has a enormous amount of different technologies running together. I think we are, as an industry, at a very strong point of experimentation. People are trying to figure out, what are these new categories? How do they actually work? Who's going to win? What will the consumer understand? How much will the consumer put up with data being taken about their daily lives, and how will we manage that as an industry? How do we deal with these things? We're in that phase right now, and I think there's a couple of areas where people are really going to be interested in it'll change their life. I mean, healthcare, I think long term is an area which will have significant improvements to people's individual lives, as well as the cost of delivering healthcare. So I think it's still early. We're seeing just this incredible proliferation of partners that want to figure out how to leverage, in many cases, technology that came from mobile and use it, in adjacent markets. I think, my colleagues here on the stage are a great example of companies that represent different areas, but are trying to figure out how to do this experimentation and grow the business into the new areas.
Jan, you deal with appliances in the home, things that people love, things that people use every day, but also one of those areas where over the years, we've seen the connected fridge at CES that's supposed to tell you when you're running out of milk. We've got the connected, teapot that you're supposed to be able to trigger via Wi-Fi from bed. You've got a tough job of figuring out what's actually practical. So how do you approach that, figuring out what do we really want to connect with, and what's it going to say to us?
Yeah, John, you're right. And to Steve's point, I think in the past we've tried to connect everything and test it, right? And I think maybe we haven't started with the right products, and we haven't started with the consumer necessarily. And I think what is happening now in the experimentation phase is we think from the consumer, we think from an emotional perspective. Think about, for instance, cooking. This is very much tied to emotion. So if I help you to be a chef, right? If I assist you over the lifetime of your appliance to be a better chef, this will excite you. And the other thing is, of course, mobile has paved the way for consumers getting used to it, also in the home, the infrastructure, the cost coming down. But for sure, the home is a late follower as compared to mobile as itself, B2B applications, or automotive. But it will come. And you see it at CES very strongly.
Phil, in the car, I think it's a prime example of the place where you don't want too many voices. Mm-hmm. Distraction is one kind of an issue in the kitchen. If you burn the bread, it's a different kind of an issue in the car.
Yep.
So when you're looking at what the connected environment, the ideal connected environment looks like in the car, mm-hmm. How much information to throw at the driver and the passengers, what do you think that looks like 3 to 5 years from now?
I think that what connectivity can do is actually reduce the amount of information we present to the customer by taking all the information that's in the car, taking it off board, processing it, and figuring out what do you really need to know about in the car. So you can take down the noise level and only present those things that are meaningful, relevant, and contextually appropriate for a vehicle. You need to leverage the broader environment in order to do that. And so with connectivity, with the proliferation of sensors in the vehicle, we can pull that information out, and instead of putting a check engine light on, which scares the hell out of you, it's fear, uncertainty, and doubt. What do I do? We can provide you actually meaningful information. Hey, pull over, you're going to damage your car, or no, you can keep driving, it's going to be okay. So we can actually reduce the level of stress and distraction in the vehicle by applying this technology.
Yeah, the check engine light is great, right? It's like, something's wrong.
We don't
what
know.
Is it? Maybe big.
It's an orange light.
Maybe not.
Orange is kind of friendly.
Drive a while, ask somebody.
That's okay.
Jeroen, speaking of check engine lights, we now have the potential for a check engine light for your body.
Yep.
Or just the ability to get a regular checkup on what's going on with you, whether it's your heart rate, your oxygen level, different things like that. CES this year is filled with devices that are tracking your steps, supposedly monitoring your sleep, but at the same time, there are a lot of regulations that are going to keep people from easily doing a lot more than that. 5 years from now, let's say just in the US, where do you think we are with this? What capabilities will we have that we're actually using that we're going to be able to access through our phones to monitor our health and maybe our parents too?
Yeah. Well, to start with, I think because the data is vital, you have to have some level of certification that is of high quality. So there should be some level of regulation around these devices. And as you said, it starts with activity monitoring, but already we're seeing a lot of other patient monitoring capabilities consumerizing very rapidly based on the same core technologies. So I think 5 years from now, we'll definitely see a large part of the population actually having wearable monitors. So what you see in the intensive care unit today, and actually Philips has about 40% of all the patient monitors in intensive care units, can be easily applied now to the consumer level. That means that you can actually start seeing a heart attack coming around 6 hours in advance. So that means you have a 6-hour window to intervene and avoid a situation which may be life-threatening. So it may be similar to Phil's story, where you diagnose, you monitor, and you see a situation that say, okay, we got to intervene now. And you can use mobile technology, obviously, to spread that message, but also to mobilize the right care. So who is the right person to, at this moment, intervene and help the patient deal with his situation?
Now, are we going to be able to afford that? Or is it going to be kind of a hospital level thing? Or is it going to be just the very wealthiest who are going to be able to afford this equipment? Or is the price going to come down to the point where it's an accessory?
Well, it's very interesting because we're working with a couple of large healthcare organizations in the US, and we started focusing on the sickest people. So typically elderly people, multiple chronic conditions. And we found out if we monitor these people from home, let them stand on a weight scale, take their blood pressure, track their medication, then we can actually avoid readmission into the hospital. So we actually found out that we can reduce readmissions by 50%. We can reduce admissions to the emergency room by 70%. So that has a huge impact on the quality, on the life of the elderly people, but also on the cost to the system. So we believe that actually these technologies will more than pay for themselves if properly applied.
It seems like there are synergies here, Jan. If I want to stay healthy, what I put into my body is part of how I figure that out. So it would be great if we could connect all this stuff, if I could figure out using Philips equipment how I'm doing, and then figure out maybe what I should do nutritionally, and then go to the kitchen and cook it. But that's going to require software, and that's going to require standards that I don't feel like we necessarily have right now. What are the pieces you think that we need to reach this utopia we hope for every January at CES? We've got the little pieces, but they don't connect. What's going to connect all of this in a way that it's easy for application developers to say, I see this connection here. Let me code something up that makes this happen?
Yeah, John, two things, and I think it's a great example. First of all, in the appliance business, there's also a B2B, a commercial business, right, where the chef cooks, the hotel owners, and so forth, see the benefit because the total cost of ownership of connecting things, controlling, doing preventive maintenance is giving productivity advantages. So to carry this over into the home for the consumer is possible at a lower cost. Then the second part is, in the consumer's home, we don't have the history anywhere on the globe of communication standardization, right? Which helps the consumer to control multiple connected devices. And today we
don't even have a history
already
of standardization between family members, right?
Exactly, and that's why we collaborate, and that's why we need, with Philips, with Qualcomm, with many other partners, the standardization effort in the home that focuses on ease of use, safety, privacy, but also interoperability of the different devices. And yes, the health theme around food, that doesn't end and stop with the cooker. You can there integrate the fridge or where the food comes from, but there is no value if these value chains cannot be easily connected for the consumer. But that's what I said earlier. This is now happening, and you see some examples here at CES, us included, and that will be the prerequisite not only for the individual killer app, that doesn't exist, but the killer ecosystem, that could exist. And the home is a little bit behind relative to the car. There is no standardization bodies or mobile to the key players historically. So we got to shape it because that will be in the interest of the consumers. And then a more dynamic business will occur. Today, appliances or most things in your home are quite static.
Right.
Not only that they don't move, also over lifetime you can't interact. Of course, with a connected product, that will be much easier. So the consumer value, also the business value, to be quite honest, is higher for all parties, all stakeholders included.
Definitely. Steve, Qualcomm's got a history of trying to solve these kinds of problems, trying to step back and say, what's the missing piece, whether it's screens, whether it's video. You've got AllJoyn that you guys are pushing now. What more could you do to solve some of these problems? And what's the kind of conversation you have with your executives about, should we do this or should we not?
Sure. So if you look back in the mobile industry, they essentially use the standards bodies to align on big design choices. But at its core, you essentially had a handful of companies that could afford to do the large amount of R&D. And the way in which it was shared with the industry is through that mechanism. Some industries that doesn't exist, or certain feature sets that doesn't exist. However, the situation where you have a small number of companies who take a leadership position and try to solve, a handful of problems, create a little bit of mass on that, and then kind of assemble other things. Now, what happens here in the Internet of Everything space? It's so diverse. There's so many ecosystems depending on the feature set that you're trying to do. What we have taken the approach is that in addition to supporting the use of technology and make it easy, a low barrier for people to innovate, which really is what's required to kind of get things to work, you need to try to figure out how to connect those ecosystems together. So if there is a home ecosystem and it's dominated by a particular manufacturer, set of manufacturers, there will be a device in your pocket or a device on your wrist that's going to talk to the one in the home and maybe the one in the automobile. You change your automobile preference, all of a sudden you're in a different ecosystem. And so we've been focusing on the cross-platform approach, and that's why we do things like AllJoyn. Now, the way in which we moved forward on that was we focused on particular use cases, audio, or connecting light switches like we announced yesterday, and then try to build mass off of that. But we, in answer directly to your question at the end, which is what do we decide as a company, is we try to make a decision that it is actually not about an individual ecosystem and driving an individual ecosystem. It's about trying to drive the ability for the industry to grow in these areas. And then after the industry is established, then you can try to figure out about how you cut up the profits, I think, is really the issue. And that's where we are, I think, in some of these new areas.
Phil, it used to be said that in the auto industry it took, I think it was something like 4 to 7 years for new technology to actually get into a car. Is that still the case, or has some of what we've seen with smartphones proliferating, Android in the car coming to the fore, iOS in the car coming to the fore, is that changing the time horizon? We're going to see some of this technology get in and people able to use it and say yes this or no not that.
Yeah, I've been in the car industry now for 3 years. I'm more of a consumer electronics guy. I came out of this space, and I went in there, these guys are Luddites. How does it take them 4 years to do this? And then you get in there and understand that they're putting together a 3,500-pound device that goes 80 miles an hour down the road and carries you and your family with it. And the one next to it's the same thing. And so thank God
Take your time.
that it takes that long to validate that this thing is safe for you and that all these pieces work well together. So what our challenge is to find a layer of abstraction so that the technology that moves at a much higher rate of speed can be iterated upon while not causing a revalidation of the core operation of the car. Because in all of this space and all this technology, We're never going to turn a car into a smartphone. That's not its purpose. Its purpose is to move you and your stuff from here to there. Now, we can do that better by creating a platform and working with Qualcomm, for example, on our latest 4G LTE. It's a communications platform. Now, we put that into the car, and that can live in the car for a long period of time. But we can offer new services like vehicle prognostics, predictive assessments. We're adding that this year, and we didn't have it last year, and it can apply to cars that were built last year. That's the change for the auto industry, and that's the new opportunity for us, is to create the right layers that we can innovate on at a speed while protecting and holding sacrosanct the safety that is inherent in a vehicle.
Now, our population, particularly in the US, but in lots of places, Japan too, is getting older, Jeroen. And for a lot of us, this is our parents, in some cases grandparents, who are to some degree connected, are increasingly farther away because we've migrated for work or whatever, but we want to keep up with them. We want to make sure that they're doing okay. How much of a driver is that demographic trend going to be in figuring out what kinds of health technologies we have access to through our phones, what kinds of devices get the attention and development to come out sooner?
Well, I think what you mentioned is a very important need space that we believe we can address with this kind of technology. So, for instance, a good friend of mine, his mother lives in the Netherlands, he lives in the US, and he calls her every day to check whether she takes her medication. So I said, you got to take our online medication dispenser, because when she's not taking it, you get an alert, and you can become part of the care team. So, and we may set it such that when she's not taking the medicine, you call her up. So you don't need to call her every day, you just intervene when it's necessary. So that's the approach we're taking. Instead of checking every day, every hour, let the system check it and only intervene when it's necessary. And that can be on medication, it can be on fall detection. I think it's a big issue. Elderly people living alone, they fall, and they're not being noted. So they might lie there for days. So this is an area where we're also working with Qualcomm. Can we detect the fall, immediately connect them to a response center? They know where the person is falling, they can triage help, and you can take that same paradigm for other things. We have our
How long
connected
until that's
labs.
mainstream?
Pardon?
How long before that's mainstream?
These products are already mainstream, but what we see is an acceleration of the services you can wrap around it. So
they're kind of
we have
available,
a product called Lifeline, which is doing fall detection,
Right.
but you can see all these other services easily being added to it, like medication management. You can see, for instance, our connected lamps can note whether somebody doesn't come out of bed in the morning.
They're available, but I don't think they're mainstream yet. They're not kind of widely, okay, just like a pill box, everybody's got it. Is it a price issue? Is it an awareness issue? Is it an insurance funding issue?
I think it's all of the above. I think the technology has got to be so simple that it's completely intuitive, it's not intrusive.
Yeah.
Insurance needs to support it, of course, or if it's a consumer proposition, it should be at a price point that it's easy to enroll in. So we see the combination coming. It's becoming easier to use. We'll see insurance actually supporting it because it allows people to stick to their treatment plans. It allows a response to be immediately cared for. So I think you'll see this stuff taking off pretty rapidly in the next coming years. And we already have 1 million elderly people wearing the device. So the easier device, the more we can layer on top of it, the better proposition.
Yeah.
Right.
The thread there is empowerment. This technology, especially for people that we might have considered afraid of it, is really something that's very empowering to them, whether it's allowing you to live alone or whether it's, in our case, with an OnStar car, people are saying, well, I've got somebody with me. If I ever need help, I just push the blue button. Or if I'm in an accident, somebody's going to be there for me. Or I know my car is going to be safe because it's looking after it for me. So this technology can be very freeing and empowering for people that might have otherwise been intimidated by it if we do the right job of not talking about the technology, but talking about what allows us to do. And I think there's a lot of similarities to what Jeroen is in what we're doing in terms of freeing people through using this connected technology.
I think also the funding mechanisms, how people get reimbursed for healthcare or get paid for healthcare, is really transitioning from being visit-based to being outcome-based. And so, particularly in the United States, and the importance with that transition, which is very disruptive actually, the importance of having remote monitoring goes up a lot. In fact, people won't even be able to get their drugs unless they can prove that they took them. Or the healthcare professional will not be able to get paid unless they can prove that they took those drugs. And that changes the industry a lot from the perspective of monitoring. And that's starting, and it should be interesting to see how it comes out.
Jan, what's the kind of most forward-thinking area of the world when it comes to home appliance type technology and home automation? Is there an area that you think is leading, that's trying out this stuff faster?
Yes, actually two. I think first, starting from the consumer and touching on the emotion, the kitchen and the cooking aspect has been undervalued so far, and that's clearly an opportunity to make the experience more emotional, more fun, and support through a lifetime, chef experience, which is clearly possible through connected products. The other one is home comfort, so air conditioning, heating, drying, humidifying, the whole conditioning, which you can connect easily to the home automation itself, right? This is an area where the remote, so to say, value is clear. When you're not at home, you like to condition your home because you've forgotten something, because you want to condition your home before you arrive there. And that area is also very important, and again, it can be done in a joyful way from a sustainability perspective, right? Homes have, like automotive, a massive CO2 footprint, and the appliances are the major users of energy. So I don't believe so much in directing and teaching the consumer, like the smart grid initiatives have tried a few years back, but more giving, like we have some examples already in the market, consumers the possibility to manage their energy use, but let's say as a secondary, let's say in a joyful way benefit, leading to a similar result, right? In actually using less resources, water and energy being the first that are being consumed by appliances, particularly in the home comfort area in a wider.
What do you think is the better motivator for technology adoption in the home? Is it joy, which you mentioned, or is it fear on the security end? It seems
joy.
Joy?
There's only one answer to that. Fear is.
So the security system is not going to be the thing, right?
Security is an element, and home automation has a security element. And yes, there are consumers that are clearly attracted by that. But if you look at, Electrolux is #2 globally in home appliances. So we look at the masses, right? And the mass consumer, which also makes a difference to the planet. And here, clearly, the joy is what people look for. The joy in cooking, the joy in conditioning the home, and not the fear about privacy or safety, even though these are extremely important qualifying topics, right? And you can destroy, of course, the value if you don't perform on that. Mm-hmm. So it's a must, it's a quality must-have. And yes, security you can also sell. I'm not doubting that.
You guys are all, and Steve, you probably won't answer this, but feel free to jump in if you like. You're all in a unique position to take a look at iOS and Android and the ways that they are trying to tackle home, car, and health. And they've carved out platform pieces to try to tackle each. Who's doing the best job in your area?
That's a tricky question.
Okay.
So I can answer that. What I like about Android is the openness. What I like about iOS is the great experience. Well, we live in a world where we have to support both. The consumer
so which is
decides.
That's not for us to decide.
Yeah.
We're showing Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in a vehicle on our booth over there, simply because we don't care. What we care about is the customer gets in the car, that their phone works with their car. And my wife might have a different phone than I do. And that shouldn't make a difference. As the manufacturer of the vehicle, what we're trying to do is create the best experience for our customers. And hey, it's reality. They're Android and Apple, they're out there, they're going to be out there until something else comes along and replace them, then we'll deal with that.
So you don't have to make a bet. You can work equally with both and let the consumer decide.
We're making a bet, we're betting on the customer. And the fact is, we're not going to sell an Android car. We're not going to sell an Apple car. We're going to sell a car. And you've got an iPhone sitting there. When you get in your car, you want that phone to work.
But there's an iOS in the car program. There's an Android car program. Do you decide to make both available on every single model?
We're showing that out right there on our show floor today. A car that same head unit, plug whatever phone you want into it, and it should work for the customer. And that's what's driving that. And we don't have to pick a winner. Our customers get into the car with a predisposition to one or the other. I'm not going to move them, so we're just going to accommodate them.
Okay. So you're doing Windows in the car?
Not enough customers asking for it.
Okay. How about? Well, better luck next year. Jan, how about you? Who's doing the better job in the home thus far, just with the platform as you can see it?
Yeah, again, the answer is similar. I won't try to teach anyone on the operating system side or on the consumer side. Consumers use both systems, so we won't teach them on this, and we got to be compatible with both. I think what we try to do together is to close the bridges between the systems and leave the consumer the choice, but without making it more complicated. And this is our task, and this is in the home a prerequisite for success. I think when you think about the home, there's another specialty, which maybe is not so much the case in B2B or in the car. It's a different lifetime, the life cycle of the products, right? There's the phone, 6 months, 1 year, TV, 3 to 5 years, white good, 8 to 10 years, central heating, 20 years, right? So the sustainability of white goods we explain are durables, right? It requires a long-term compatibility to have a credible offer to the consumer. And the consumer, over those 10 or 20 years of owning the flat or the home, will have to make a lot of choices and doesn't want to be tied, and maybe switches even from iOS to Android several times or to whatever. So for durables, it is important to be compatible and to bring that value across to the consumers, because they buy on sustainability and durable criteria for sure.
Yeah, Steve, who's your favorite, Apple or Google?
Yeah, we never. It's a big world. It's a very big world.
That was mostly just a joke. You get money from everybody, so it's fine. So if we're looking at the services and the possibilities that all of these things deliver, it strikes me that on the back end, there's a lot of data. And best case scenario, there's a lot of it to be analyzed. There are suggestions to be made, whether it's telling you that you could drive better or your teenager could drive better, telling you that you should be eating this and not that, or checking in this often and not that often, cooking this way and not that way based on the results that you got or based on the temperature that you decided to set when you were trying to bake that chicken. Who's going to do that? Are you guys hiring big data experts? Are you guys working with Amazon Web Services or Azure on supercomputing resources to try to figure out how to answer those questions? Or is that for somebody else to do?
Well, we clearly see the data as core to the proposition. If you look at the amount of data that you now can collect on the human body, it's not just the trackers that you talk about. We're now very far in digitizing biopsy, so you can take a cancer tissue, analyze a subcell, you can take a genome sequence of that tissue and start understanding what the impact of the cancer will be, and you combine that with behavioral, hereditary, other data. The real value is going to be in combining that data and making it actionable for the patients first and foremost, secondly for the care team we talked about, but also for the clinicians. And especially pharma industry will be interested in this as well, because they're going to move to personalized medicine as well. So the data is going to be core. Now, what I'm talking about can go up to 1 terabyte per patient. So we're talking about huge amounts of data. So yes, we're working with people like Amazon on the core infrastructure, but we have our own data scientists that will provide those algorithms, and we work with research institutions on those algorithms. But those algorithms is essentially what you're talking about, which will guide the action.
Much in the same way, there's different classes of information. Nobody knows more about our vehicles than we do, the people that built it. And so to do predictive diagnostics, we need to analyze that data. We need to have those skills in order to do that, to say, hey, your starter's going to fail. Now, there's a bunch of other data that's in there as well that, with the customer's consent, when we capture it, we work with partners in order to figure out what's the best way to offer a service to that customer. So it really depends on the nature of the data and whether or not we have the expertise or we feel we need to build the expertise in order to deliver value from that data.
And Jan and Steve, before you weigh in, I want to let the audience know you can use the hashtag CES Mobile if you want to tweet a question at the panel, and maybe I'll see it, and if I see it, maybe I'll ask it. It's, I don't know, yeah, there it is, CES Mobile. So tweet away.
Yeah, I think in the home, the collaboration is part of the success story. So we got to open a little bit to allow the interoperability, you know, the consumer to interact, to have the picture of the oven on the TV. But when it comes to storing the data and using it in a branded way for the consumer, we outsource the service, the cloud service, but we own the data. And of course, then you get into a broader space of digitalization, consumer relationship management. And actually, this is what I said earlier, there's a cost to it, but there's a value for static products in it that we haven't seen before, so that we have a win-win situation of those that provide the cloud, us that provide the branded lifetime experience, and the consumer that can get more out of her or his cooker, as an example.
Steve?
Well, I think everyone's really interested in what's going to happen to the data. I mean, the description that I've heard is that people kind of simplify Google's business on the web as sort of the relationship between data and the web, and Facebook as the relationship between people. Someone will be the Google and the Facebook of the relationship between things for particular applications, and there'll be a lot of ability to make money there. What will be interesting, at least from our perspective, is that as you get all this data, tremendous amount of data, if you're metering up people or you're metering up things or what have you, the way in which the architecture of the internet grows, it won't be able to scale to the level that it gets to, and there'll be a need for a different level of security for that type of data. And I think there will even be services and money made on really only exposing certain portions of the internet to you. Now, the way to think about it in my mind is you may be very comfortable having the entire internet available to your laptop and also, you know, whatever ecosystem you're comfortable with in your smartphone. But you'll probably be much less comfortable having people having access to your heart rate or exactly the position of your body at any given time. And it's a tremendous amount of data that can be available. And that will actually create opportunities for companies like us to invent technologies where instead of speeds and feeds, but things like robustness, privacy, and security become big elements of innovation. And I think you'll see that in concert with people producing business models associated with the data.
So BlackBerry initially got popular on something like this for email, right? Yep. Having their own network, not necessarily the fastest, but secure and purpose-built. You think we're going to have something like that for sensitive types of data that machines are communicating?
I think you will see that. Now, you see that today in a lot of cases with people that have private data, or private networks, for example, for certain types of data. But as you start to get more consumerization, I guess, of the Internet of Things, that need will be even more important on the, you know, whatever the equivalent of the open Internet will be for that world.
Yeah. It strikes me that this type of data could also become really important to product development. I mean, if you can see...
Yeah, we're already using it that way. We have been for a number of years. We've had OnStar in vehicles for 18 years, and we're pulling information out of the car and feeding that back into our warranty groups, into our engineering groups, so they understood how people are using the cars, so they can design the next one with that in mind and what the problems were.
Is there an example that you can give on, you know, the steering wheel, you know,
well, some of it's, you know, when you turn on a fan in a car. We had an example last year where it wasn't turning on early enough, the engines were overheating. We were able to diagnose that and actually make a change to the car to turn on the fan earlier. And so there was a very tight feedback loop in there. And that's a real simple example, and there's much more deep examples as well.
And otherwise, you would have had to wait until a bunch of things went wrong before.
And have a whole bunch of failures and then a whole bunch of people at dealerships and then have to get them back to the dealerships to make that change. And so the whole system worked better and almost magically for the customer in that regard.
So ideally, 5 to 10 years from now, maybe not as many recalls as the industry is dealing with now.
Well, not as many recalls for software.
Right.
For things that can be set as calibrations, for things that can be set as software levels in the car.
Similar to fewer hospital visits for people if you can do preventive monitoring.
But I want to take Steve's point on the data, because I think it's really important that we separate the data so that, you know, there's data I generate as a patient, there's data generated by general practitioner, by the pharma industry, by the care team, etc. And then it's a matter of ensuring that the data is secure, but also that you allow easy permissions. Right? So I can give my general practitioner permission to look at my data, or the other way around. I can look at the notes that he made on me, or the imaging study of my MRI. So we need that infrastructure that allows us to enable secure data, but also to easily grant permissions on that data. And for instance, a lot of the data, medical data, can be used for research if we de-identify it. So we also found out that a lot of people are willing to share that data if we can guarantee that it cannot be linked back to them. So, but then research suddenly has a huge amount of data that they can reinterpret for new treatment and diagnosis approaches. So I think we have to guarantee what you said, you know, the security and the permissions. If we do that, then we'll see that data will actually start flowing much more freely if people feel secure.
Jan, are we far from getting better stoves and washing machines because you can see exactly how people are using or even misusing them and design them better?
Yeah, there is a clear benefit. I wouldn't say it's a primary benefit, but on quality, you get much more information on how consumers actually use products in their homes, which is very hard because you can't easily conduct field tests. The legislation actually doesn't allow you to do this. So yes, we get a lot of more knowledge on complex systems in the US. Let's say ice makers and water dispensers, very popular on the fridge. It's not the primary function, but it's hard to understand the complex system which involves software and hardware at the same time. And this is a very easy way in actually understanding and therefore accelerating development, how consumers use the product, and realizing that maybe your standard test doesn't actually represent consumer use of a product. So there's a clear benefit. Again, it's a secondary benefit. The consumer benefit has to be the first in use of the product, but I see clear benefits in that, and we will.
I want to try a little experiment on the fly here because we just got in a bunch of really good questions from the audience. So a bit of a lightning round. I'm going to ask for short answers to the extent that you can. And if you can't, maybe just say pass. No long answers. Okay. Phil, how is GM dealing with distracted driving concerns with its infotainment?
By making sure that we simplify the experience for our customers.
And you mentioned that up front. Let's see, Steve, what are some good uses for mobile devices in enterprise that are being underused?
Boy, underused. I think underused in enterprise. I'll tell you, I'm going to pass. It's just amazing use in enterprise.
This is kind of fun, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a game show all of a sudden.
Exactly.
Let's see. Let's see if I can find a health one here. We'll throw this at Jeroen anyway. In your respective industries, health specifically here, what's the biggest opportunity for tech startups in Internet of Everything?
I think the biggest opportunity for tech startups is really zooming in on helping people with a specific condition. And it's really integrating devices. If you can integrate a continuous glucose meter with insulin, with what you eat, with your activity, and help people provide them, you know, people with diabetes like my daughter who has juvenile diabetes. if startups can help integrating that and creating this holistic experience for certain type of conditions, I think they really help address a big need in the
Great.
market.
Back to you, Steve, because that was a hard one on enterprise, and I feel bad. But this is a good question, too. Do you see cellular carriers playing a larger or smaller role for connected devices in the future?
I think a larger, and in particular because they, you really need to be able to bridge all of the places that people take their devices. And more and more that requires a blend of almost every technology you can think of.
Phil, great. How will these technologies impact and be applied in emerging markets like India, Nigeria, and Brazil?
In those emerging markets, actually, the need for some of these services that we're offering, because the rest of the infrastructure there is not up to the same levels, people are willing to pay for safety, security, vehicle recovery in ways that they wouldn't in more developed markets. So there's a lot of opportunities for these technologies to meet the needs that are being unmet by the infrastructure that they live in.
Jan, you work for a big company, so maybe you're biased here, but I'll ask, are big players or small startups going to be better at capturing a consumer's need for personalization in products?
They will do it together. I think the open innovation will grow, the hackfests are growing, and the small companies will maybe explore more ideas, and the bigger companies will apply the killer ones.
Phil, for all the terabytes of data per customer, who's going to pay for storage? Once you have that commercial, who's going to pay for all this? Subscription model, amortized cost, something else? Who's going to pay for storage?
If you start at finding value for the customer, if you create value there, there's lots of ways to then find ways to extract and participate in that value. And if it makes sense and we can have the business model, we'll have a lot of people paying for different parts of it, whether it's us, the customer, or our partners.
You answered this one, Jeroen, I believe. Can the data be researched with medical data on 1 million people? Can it be used to find cures? How will privacy play into it? You talked about anonymizing it and people actually wanting to participate often.
Yeah. So we clearly see that once we can guarantee that people are more than willing to share their data in the interest of research, because it applies to them, but also to, maybe friends and family and other people. They can help in a very easy way.
I love smart people. You guys were wonderfully good sports during that lightning round. We got through a lot of questions in exactly 5 minutes. So, and thank you to the audience, because you guys sent in some good ones as well. We're getting close to the end here, so I always like to try to toss things forward a bit. 2 years from now, not 1 year from now, but 2 years from now, what do you think we're going to be talking about at CES 2017 when it comes to cars, Phil? It's going to be the big buzzy topic.
I think you're going to see a lot more of the elements of autonomous driving. Closer in, not being concepts or forward thought, that elements of that will be realized, and you're going to be getting the benefits of that before fully autonomous vehicles.
Jan, in the home, 2 years from now, what are we going to be talking about?
You will see further outlooks for the home, and you will see a lot of series products that will have passed in value the percent threshold, a single-digit percent threshold in the market.
Steve, system on a chip and integrating features, what are we going to be talking about 2 years from now?
I think you'll see more peer-to-peer based services and make it easy for people to do it.
Direct between devices?
Yeah.
Interesting. Jeroen, 2 years from now,
You'll see devices connected into full propositions. Propositions for pregnant women, for people with diabetes. So you'll see that the different devices get connected. They may be connected to food. They may even be connected to your car. If somebody might get a seizure, he will be warned to take the car off the road. So you'll see that these connections are actually being made, and that will take another 2 years, I guess.
So are you saying a combination of heart rate monitoring and glucose monitoring and different types of devices talking together because you know that pregnant women specifically need those and the services on the background instead of one specific targeted use?
Yeah, it will be way beyond activity monitoring and sleep monitoring.
All right. Well, we're about a minute early, but those were all great answers. And I say We stop where we're ahead. You guys were wonderful. Thanks again for being such great panelists. And everybody enjoy the rest of CES, because mobile certainly is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.